Hey everybody, welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. My name is Samuel Allred, and today I'm going to give you 10 tips for sighting in your rifle. I'm not going to focus on a specific method for sighting in your rifle. There are lots of tutorials out there and YouTube videos and articles, so I think you can find that out pretty easily. Instead, I really want to talk about how to maximize your time at the range, how to be efficient with your ammunition, how to get the best results when you are sighting in your rifle. But just so we're all on the same page, I will give a quick overview of the sight-in process. So first of all, you have to mount your optic. Whether your optic is a scope or it's a red dot, maybe it's already mounted to your rifle, like iron sights. You just need to make sure that your sight is mounted correctly to your rifle. So that's step number one. Then you're going to choose a load. You need a sight in with the same load that you're going to hunt with, or else your point of impact could be different when you hit the field. The next thing is you're going to shoot a group. A group is a number of shots, usually 3 or 5, that are shot at the same point of aim. And then they probably won't hit in the exact same place, which is why we call it a group. Then you can find the average of where your shots grouped. So if you shot a 3-shot group and they're a little bit high and to the left, you might try to find the center of that 3-shot group. And then you know how much you need to adjust your scope. Right? So if you're an inch high and an inch to the left, then you are going to have to adjust your point of aim so that it matches with your point of impact. And then after you've done that, you're going to go ahead and shoot another group to verify. So that's a simplified sort of sight-in process. It can get more complicated depending on a variety of factors. Maybe your optic doesn't track perfectly, so you over-adjust or under-adjust. Maybe something's been mounted wrong. Maybe something comes loose. Maybe your barrel heats up very quickly and starts throwing shots. Whatever it is, it can be more complicated than that. But in an ideal world, it's really shoot a group or two, make some adjustments, and then verify. Once again, if you need more clarification on that, Google it, find a YouTube video. It's not too complicated, and there's a lot of great 3 to 5 minute videos that will show you exactly what you need to know. All right, so my first tip for sighting in your rifle is to go with a buddy. Having a buddy helps for a number of reasons. First of all, you have someone there who can spot for you when you're shooting. So if you shoot at your target and you're a little bit low, but you didn't see where your shot was, your buddy might be able to tell you, hey, I saw the shot, hit low, we're going to have to adjust your scope up. A buddy can also watch you shoot and tell you what you're doing to create inconsistencies. So maybe a buddy looks at you and you pull the trigger and you're flinching a lot. Or you're doing something where you're moving as you take the shot. And having someone else there is helpful to be able to diagnose and show you things that you might not be able to recognize yourself. You can also do drills with a buddy or do things where they load your rifle. They don't tell you if you've actually loaded it or not. And so then you pull the trigger. And if it's not loaded and you flinch, you discover just how much you're flinching when you're shooting a rifle. So a buddy can really help you with form and spotting. Another thing that I really like having a buddy for is it just makes going to the range more fun. Sometimes you get to the range and there's really strict range safety officers, and we want them to be strict. Obviously, we want to be safe, but it can make it a little bit uncomfortable or nerve-wracking. And then sometimes I'll get just a little bit nervous, like putting too much pressure on myself when I go to the range. I'm thinking, I'm spending a lot of money just by shooting ammunition. I need to be efficient, all these things. Having a buddy can kind of bring the temperature down, make it a little bit more fun. You guys can look out for each other, help each other out. And I think that's a really big advantage of bringing a friend to the range. My second tip is to get a solid rest. Use sandbags, blocks with carpet or fabric on them, your coat, whatever you need to get that rest rock solid. You do want the rifle to be able to recoil, so I wouldn't recommend anything that stops the rifle from recoiling or clamping it down or something. But when that rifle is resting on the bench, you want multiple points of contact, and you don't want it to pitch up or down easily or move from side to side or cant. I like to think about getting the rifle on target without my body influencing it in any way. So if I can get the rifle set on the bench to a point where if I somehow fired the rifle without touching it, it would actually hit my paper target, I'm already in a good position to make a good shot. And then once I get down on the rifle, I can make the fine adjustments to get it exactly in the center of my target. One thing to be aware of when you're setting up your rest is that you should not let your barrel touch your rest. So it's fine to put a sandbag under the stock or the forend, but don't let the sandbag or the block or whatever you're using, don't let that touch your barrel, because that can actually throw off the shot by messing with the harmonics of your barrel. Another thing to remember is that sighting in is different than hunting practice, right? When you're practicing to shoot while hunting, you might shoot from different field positions. You might shoot from laying down. You might shoot offhand. When you're sighting in a rifle, you're trying to minimize human error, and you just want to know exactly where your shots are impacting and exactly where your sight is aimed. When you know these two things, you can adjust them and marry them together to get a perfectly sighted in rifle. All right, my third tip is to use a shot process. Using a shot process will make you more accurate and it will save you money. Every time you're pulling the trigger, you're sending $1.50, $2, maybe $3 downrange, right? So when you're sighting in, you do want to be efficient. I'd rather practice with my sighted in rifle than spend $70 trying to sight my rifle in, right? So using a shot process is going to help you be more accurate and more efficient. What is a shot process? Well, a shot process is a predetermined set of actions that you do every time when you're taking a shot. Everybody's shot process could be a little bit different. I learned mine from listening to Remy Warren, and then I've probably adapted it from there. I know the military teaches a shot process. I'll go through my process so you can understand what a shot process is and how you might use one. So first, I stabilize the rifle, and I'm trying to get my point of aim on the target. That's the first thing. The next thing is I flip off my safety. I've had instances where I'm hunting and I've pressed the trigger and my safety was on and I missed the shot opportunity. So I've built that into my shot process of flipping off my safety. Then I put my crosshair on the spot on my target. So this kind of combines two parts of the shot process. One is choosing a spot on your target. You always need to choose a spot. It's the idea of aim small, miss small. If you choose a spot, you're more likely to hit near your spot. If you're just aiming at the animal, you're likely to miss, right? So I have a step that's put my crosshair on the spot on my target. Then I go ahead and control my breathing. Sometimes this means taking a bit of a deep breath. Sometimes it means breathing out a little bit slower, but it's to help calm my heart rate and just kind of clear my head and make sure I'm being intentional about my shot. Then I feel the trigger, I squeeze, and I follow through. Follow through for me usually means looking through the scope and trying to see where I hit. If you squeeze the trigger and then fling your head up to look at your impact or rack another round or something like that, there's a chance that you're throwing your shot off as you move before you've completed your trigger pull. So it's very important to follow through. Using a shot process is not only great for the range, but it's also great for hunting. And a shot process may have 7 steps, but once you've done it 100 times or more than that, it's all going to go very quickly, and you're just going to check each of those off, and it will take you maybe a second, and then you can execute more accurate, more consistent shots every time. My 5th tip is to dry fire. Dry firing can also save you money because you can work on your mechanics, you can work on your trigger pull without actually shooting. So if you are getting to know a new rifle, maybe you're sighting in a rifle for the first time and you haven't shot it a lot, it's good to go ahead and dry fire and figure out where your trigger breaks. Figure out how it feels good to get down on the gun and how to position yourself and where your hand needs to go. And most center fire rifles are safe to dry fire. So don't be shy about going out and just practicing going through your shot process and dry firing instead of ripping off a shot every time. Another thing that dry firing has helped me with is flinching. If I go out and try dry firing a couple times, focusing on not flinching, it will help me just not be afraid of pulling the trigger. And so I go ahead, dry fire, then I load a shot, and usually that helps me mitigate my flinching. And when you mitigate those things like flinching, you're helping yourself also shoot a better group, get a more accurate idea of where the rifle is actually shooting. Whereas if you go out and you're flinching a lot, you might be throwing your shots, leading you to chasing your zero all around the target. All right, we've gone through 4 tips. We haven't even taken a shot yet, right? My next tip is to start close. Especially when you're mounting the sight for the first time, it's important to start real close to your target. 25 yards isn't too close if it helps you get your first shot on paper. And if you're not on paper at 25 yards, just come closer. If you start too far away, you run the risk of missing your paper target completely, and then you've essentially wasted a shot because you don't have a good data point for how much you need to adjust your optic. So if you've missed the target completely, and even worse, you didn't see where it went, right? Sometimes when you're at 100 yards, it's pretty hard to see your impact depending on the caliber and recoil of your rifle. So it's better to start close and send that first shot and get a data point on paper so you can start making rough adjustments. And then once you're on paper, you can go ahead and move further out. Starting close will save you ammo, it will save you time, and most of all, it will save you from a lot of frustration. My next tip comes into play once you've got that first shot on paper close up and you've moved your target out maybe to 100 yards. I recommend that you bring a spotting scope if you have it, or binoculars. Having a spotting scope or binoculars will help you look at your target without having to walk all the way out to your target every time. Depending on the optic you have on your rifle, you might be able to see your target just fine. But especially with entry-level scopes, sometimes you just don't get the best view of your target. It can be really helpful to have a spotting scope or binoculars. You can also give your spotting scope or binoculars to your buddy, and they can look at your target and help you understand where you're hitting and where you need to make adjustments. One thing I will say is sometimes I will shoot a better group when I don't see the impacts, right? So I shoot and I keep my point of aim the same each time, but I can't tell that I'm 4 inches off or an inch low or whatever it is, because sometimes you shoot and you think, oh, that's way off, and that makes you a little uncomfortable or whatever, when it doesn't really matter. It matters more about how the rifle is grouping. So if seeing where your shots are going psychs you out, then wait till you've shot a group to go look at it. Don't get that immediate feedback from your buddy or by checking your shots every single time. You may find that it's a great group, it's just a little bit off, and you need to adjust your scope to account for that. Okay, tip number 7, use an inch grid target. You can buy paper targets that are printed with an inch grid. It's like graphing paper, except every square is a square inch. And you can buy these targets for pretty cheap, and they're going to help you a lot at the range. Because when you shoot your group, you'll immediately be able to see how far from your point of aim you are. So with an inch grid target, you shoot your group, then you look through your scope or binoculars, take a look, and you see, oh, okay, my 3 shots are about 2 inches high and 1 inch to the left. And you can just see this because there's the grid lines, right? Well, with that information, you can then go and adjust your scope accordingly. Without that inch grid, you're going to have to either walk out to your target and measure it with a ruler or something like that, or you're going to have to estimate. So there's bullseye targets, and those are fun, but when you're sighting in, you find yourself thinking, okay, that ring is about 3 inches. I bet it's 3 inches high, but then I don't know exactly how far left it is. And so you start making estimations. And then when you go to adjust your scope, you're not doing a precise adjustment. So it's very helpful. It will save you time. It will save you money and ammo to just get an inch grid target and use that. You also won't have to walk out to your target every time. And I think it's just the way to go when you're sighting in a rifle. Okay, tip number 8, let your barrel cool. When you're shooting, your barrel will heat up. And when it heats up too much, the metal can expand and expand unevenly, and it will actually change your barrel's shape and also the barrel's harmonics. This means that when your barrel heats up, your point of impact can shift. If you're not aware of this or not prepared for it, this can be very frustrating at the range. Say you've shot 2 or 3 groups now and you've made some adjustments and you're shooting another group to verify. But at this point, your barrel has heated up quite a bit. Well, now your barrel isn't shooting at the same place that it used to be shooting. So you might be shooting to verify, but for some reason now your shots are all to the left or are stringing along. At that point, you're going to start chasing your zero, meaning your point of impact is changing and you keep trying to adjust your scope to match that, but it's variable. And so it's just an endless process where you're never going to actually get your point of impact and point of aim to match up. You can avoid this though by letting your barrel cool. So it's different for different barrels, right? I have a hunting rifle, a 30-06 that has a very thin sporter barrel. It's nice because it's very light, but it will start to show point of impact shifts after maybe 2 or 3 groups. So I have to pay attention to that and make sure that I give enough time for my barrel to cool so that I have consistent barrel performance. I found that with my barrel, I can usually let it sit for about 10 minutes, and that will bring it back to just about cold bore point of impact. Now, every barrel is different, right? So if you have a heavier target barrel, that barrel is less likely to heat up as quickly. It may cool down faster with more surface area. So different rifles will have different tolerances for how many shots you can put through them before the barrel has heated up enough to affect accuracy. You're going to have to pay attention when you're shooting and figure that out for yourself. But just be aware of that and know that a very hot barrel could be affecting your accuracy. Now, another reason to let your barrel cool is just to take a break. Sometimes you'll be shooting, you'll have your ear protection on, you will be trying to focus, trying to minimize human error, right? And that can take a lot of brain power and make you tired. So it's not bad to take a step back, take some deep breaths, walk around a little bit, and then come back to it. And that will help you shoot good groups. That will help you get good data points for your point of impact and where you need to adjust your scope. And overall, it will help your experience at the range just by taking a break and coming back. Now, just like chasing your zero when your barrel is hot can be very frustrating, it can also be frustrating if your scope comes loose. So that brings me to my 9th tip, which is bring your scope wrench. There was a time when I had a new rifle, a new scope, and I was bringing it to the range, and I was still breaking in the rifle and trying to get it sighted in. And I shot a group or two, and it just didn't seem to be doing what I wanted it to. I couldn't seem to get my point of impact and point of aim to match up. When I was about 15 shots in, I noticed that my scope was loose. So I thought, well, that's the problem, right? My point of aim is all over the place, and anytime I make an adjustment, it could be changing with every shot. So I thought, okay, I'll get my scope wrench, I'll tighten this down, that will fix the problem. But I didn't have my scope wrench, so I had to go get my scope wrench. And that the range was kind of far away from where I lived, so it kind of like burned a day for me, burned an afternoon. And it was really discouraging overall because I had just spent money on the ammunition. I had taken the time to go to the range. I had brought my gun. I had brought sandbags, stuff like that. And then it was just all for nothing. So I recommend always bringing your scope tool. I will even bring it hunting in my gear kit that I leave in the car, just in case your scope gets bumped, it comes loose for some reason. Bring a wrench or something that you can use to tighten that down and make sure that you will always be able to actually sight in your rifle when you want to. All right, on to tip number 10. This one is a little bit subjective, but it's helped me, so I'm going to throw it out there. And that's remove your hearing protection during a ceasefire. So you obviously want to wear hearing protection whenever you need to. And if your range doesn't allow you to take it out, don't do that. But if you can, I think it's helpful, kind of like taking a break from shooting, to take out your hearing protection and just use your senses normally. There's something about hearing protection that makes me feel a little bit claustrophobic, like almost anxious. And it's kind of embarrassing to say that, but it's true. And it's helpful to just take it out sometimes and recalibrate. And I think that brings the stress at the firing range down for me and helps me be a better shooter overall. So give it a try. You may find that it makes your time at the range a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more enjoyable. All right, so those are my 10 tips for sighting in a rifle. I hope they're helpful for you and give you some things to think about besides just the exact method that you're going to use. I hope they help you maximize your time and efficiency at the range. And I'll wrap it up here with a closing thought. Actually, we'll call it a bonus tip. And that is have reasonable expectations for your shooting. If you're new to shooting, chances are your groups aren't going to be the tightest, most precise groups ever. And that's okay. That's just the reality of shooting, and it takes time and practice. Also, when I started shooting, I didn't know how much variation there could be in rifles, the rifle itself. So a rifle these days can shoot a group that is under an inch in diameter at 100 yards. But there's plenty of rifles out there that probably won't shoot that well. And even if they did, the person shooting the rifle might not have that capability. So I think it's helpful to realize this, to know going into this that your groups are going to be, a couple inches apart just depending on how good of a shooter you are, how good your rifle setup is, how precise it is. And that's okay. When you're shooting, your bullets are very unlikely to just land one on top of each other like they do in a movie or something. And that's okay. That's how it's been for years and years, and that's how it is for most hunters, except for maybe the really elite people who are spending a lot of time developing their loads, working on the different components of their rifles, and training. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't practice and you shouldn't strive to become a better shot. Of course you should. We have a responsibility to the animals that we're hunting to make ethical shots. So you always want to do your best to become a better shooter. But if you're new and you're shooting a 4-inch group at 100 yards, don't throw in the towel. Don't think that you can't hunt. You should just adjust the range at which you take shots to your personal capability. So if you can shoot a 4-inch group at 100 yards and you are hunting whitetail, you probably have a 6-inch vital zone on that deer, right? So you want to think about how far away can the whitetail be, and I can still put my shot in that 6-inch vital zone. If you're shooting much smaller groups, you can shoot further out. If you're shooting bigger groups, you should bring that range in. And it's going to be different for every person. You should think about it and think about what you're comfortable with ethically and what you think you can do under pressure. And then go out and hunt and have a great time. And as you hunt and shoot more, you will get better and improve over time. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. I hope your sighting in and shooting goes well. And until next week, happy hunting.